Greetings, my good bitches. The name's Francis. Coke Francis. I'm an editor, Twitch streamer, drag artist, and I'm here because I'm still the president of comedy, apparently. And as such, I have just one question. What's the deal with the Riyadh Comedy Festival? That was supposed to be Jerry Seinfeld. I'm not very good at impressions. Now, you wouldn't know it, given some of the things I've said over the years, but I actually love stand-up comedy. In fact, I did it for several years before I started this channel. Ultimately, I decided that it just wasn't for me. But another big reason I left the stand-up scene is because of this weird vibe that manifested in its bowels following the pandemic. See, the woke mind virus made it impossible for me to see that what had actually happened was that comedy became legal again. Woke truly died once the host of Fear Factor opened a comedy club in Austin, where every patron has their phone confiscated and magnetically sealed for fear of canceling on the internet. The First Amendment is here to stay, and it was only at the cost of promoting a dementia-addled dictator who pulls comedians off the air for making very mild comments about his favorite podcaster. These free speech warriors, these modern-day philosophers who say what's on everyone's mind, which they seem to think are just slurs. These are our bravest soldiers from the front lines of the great PC wars of the 2020s, which is why the funniest thing they've ever done is accept an invitation to perform for the government and royal family of Saudi Arabia. In case you guys don't know why this is a bad thing, here's Zach Woods to explain the situation in a way that I wish I could have.
All of your favorite comedians are performing at the pleasure of Turkey al-sheikh, and he is the head of the entertainment authority over there, and he has so many people thrown in prison because they tweeted stuff he didn't like about the soccer team or whatever, that there's a wing of a prison nicknamed after him where they hang people by their heels from the ceiling. Now there's a lot of drips, killjoys, and dweebazoids who are saying, oh, they shouldn't do comedy over there because it's whitewashing a regime that just in June killed a journalist and killed Jamal Khashoggi and played a big role in 9/11. Shut up. Name one comedian who hasn't himself out to a dictator. Human Rights Watch has been begging the comedians not to participate in the whitewashing of the horrors that are ongoing in Saudi Arabia. Ugh, what a block Human Rights Watch is for comedy.
Like sports and video games, the Riyadh Comedy Festival is just another addition to what's called Vision 2030, a project by the Saudi Arabian government in line with the vision of the royal family to improve their economic, social, and cultural image to the world, all while keeping their brutal regime against women, queer people, and the freedom of speech as oppressive as ever. And despite all the stand-up bubbles bursting like never before as more and more people catch on to the bullshit, we still live in the age of the sellout, because nothing says legalized comedy like a contractual obligation to not make fun of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, its leadership, public figures, culture, people, the royal family, the legal system, government, any religion, any religious tradition, any religious figure, or any religious practice. Now, here's the thing. I don't really give a shit if people sell out. I'm not gonna sit here and hyperventilate like Kyle Kalinske over all these huge names selling out. There's just such a palpable irony in that after all these years of we're the free speech warriors and we should be able to joke about whatever we want, they are ready and willing to sign a contract stating that they cannot, in fact, joke about whatever they want. So if you've been suffering from an irony deficiency, this video is for you. And as the president of comedy, I've naturally developed a hyperfixation over this whole ordeal, and I decided to rank every sellout performing at the Riyadh Comedy Festival based on my admiration of them, or lack thereof, as well as my disappointment, or lack thereof, in them attending. When I was Googling the names of everybody in this lineup, I, Queen Coke Francis, star of stage and screen, decided to test my level of celebrity by Googling myself, and what I found absolutely shocked me, because not only had I not been invited to the Riyadh Comedy Festival, despite being the president of comedy, but I saw that all of my personal info had been leaked to the World Wide Web, with my phone number, email, birthday, and and social security number available for all to see, my risk of identity theft was higher than ever because, let's face it, who wouldn't want to be me? But unlike the comics who sold out for half the cost of a house in Missouri, those pesky data brokers who collected all of my personal info walked away with actual billions. And at this point, my best option to prevent all of this was the sponsor of today's video, Aura. You might already have a digital security tool, but not having Aura is like locking the front door but leaving the back door open. Because Aura is all-in-one digital security that not only automatically removes your info from these data broker sites, but keeps it off. You'll be notified if your personal info is found on the dark web, and get real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking with US-based fraud experts available to help 24/7. Aura also has a ton of other features to keep you safe online, including a secure VPN, an antivirus, a password manager, and many more. And should the worst-case scenario happen, Aura offers up to $5 million in identity theft insurance protection. It's one app with every layer of protection. I won't leave myself vulnerable anymore, and you shouldn't either. You can use my special link, aura.com/QueenCokeFrancis for a free 14-day trial, which is enough time for Aura to find out where your data is being exposed and sold. And with that, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Alright, so I have divided these superstars into 7 categories. Damn, 7.
7?
First one is genuinely tragic, can't even joke about this. For as much as I'm hardly surprised by anything nowadays, these are the entries that truly blindsided me. Next one is disappointed but not surprised. These are comedians who I do actually like and expected better from them because I'm optimistic and therefore stupid. But at the end of the day, when it comes to getting your bag...
Oh, that's what I thought you'd say, you dumb fucking horse.
Next category is, bro, how much money do you actually need? These comics already have so much money that I guess they needed a different type to add to their collection. All that freedom of speech is under attack money doesn't quite hold the weight that it used to, so blood money from one of the most oppressive regimes on the planet is the perfect addition. This also kind of applies to the next category. I'd be more surprised if you didn't do this. These are both the modern day philosophers who are currently trying to distance themselves from their veteran status in the free speech wars, as well as those who, well, let's just say a full audience was a sight for their sore eyes. Our next 2 categories are do know, don't care, and don't know, don't care. There were plenty of comics on the bill that I was familiar with, but either didn't have much of an opinion on or had never heard of them whatsoever. Either way, I don't care. And finally, we have our dishonorable mentions category. Our fallen heroes who missed out on this opportunity because I guess they thought all those limitations in the contract were there for funsies. Alright, we are officially 3 pages into the script and it is almost 1 in the morning, so let's get loud. We're gonna get our dishonorable mentions out of the way. First up is none other than reformed homosexual Tim Dillon, whose decision to join this festival even surprised one of the biggest sellouts in comedy.
I will be doing it at the Riyadh Comedy Festival very soon. Get your tickets! Get your tickets!
Are you really gonna go there?
Of course I am.
Wow.
Why would I not?
Now, it's important to note that scientific extraordinaire Joseph Rogan was not, in fact, invited to the Riyadh Comedy Festival. So if there is one good thing you can say about the Saudi government, they at least have some standards.
How big was the check?
$375,000 for one show.
But Tim's dreams were shattered when he found out the contract stating that he couldn't criticize the Saudi government actually meant he couldn't criticize the Saudi government.
I was fired from the Riyadh Comedy Festival. My agent called me. He said, they heard what you said about them having slaves. And I said, I was being positive about it. I said, I was defending them for having slaves. I literally said, slaves are probably hard workers and, for the most part, agreeable. But they didn't like that.
The leopards are morbidly obese. Sorry you lost the gig, Team You Eric Cartman. Our next dishonorable mention is former SNL writer Nimesh Patel. Now, I had heard this guy's name, I've never seen his work, and I don't watch SNL for a couple of reasons. 1, it's cringe and unfunny, and 2, I lost a roast battle to Mitchell about 6 years ago, and Michael Che was one of the judges. Anyway, Nimesh voluntarily dropped out of the Riyadh Comedy Festival, citing claiming a supposed change of heart. By God, the Phantom Thieves have done it again. In a now deleted TikTok post, Nimesh said that he could make up for the huge amount of money he lost by doing, quote, 40 shows here in the perfectly clean, moral, above everyone else United States of America. Let's put a pin in that really quick because I've seen this debate a lot over the past couple weeks. There is a big difference between performing for the people versus performing for the government or royal families. These comics weren't just performing for normal folks at a normal club. They were paid upwards of millions and placed under a censorship contract by the folks actually enacting the brutal oppression of its citizens. Sure, there were civilians at this show, but the ones who actually produced the event were front and center in the audience, hence all of those restrictions on their material. And honestly, the exact same goes for here in the US. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with performing for the people of the United States, unless you're in Austin, ew. But if any of these comics performed for Lord God Emperor President Trump at Mar-a-Lago, you really think there wouldn't be any backlash? If they performed for the guy that Sheila Broflovsky just tore a new asshole, you really think there wouldn't be a massive public outcry? If you're a comedian and you accept money from a regime that executes or imprisons anybody critical of their theocracy, you are no longer a comedian. You're a court jester. So I'm sure Nimesh made that bitter response because he was super bummed out about losing out on all that money, and honestly, who could blame him? And our last dishonorable mention goes to none other than Jim Jeffries, who got the old kickaroo for the same reason Team U Chris Farley did. During a podcast appearance with everyone's favorite meth head uncle, Jimmy's offending remark was,
"One reporter was killed by the government. Unfortunate, but not a fucking hill that I'm gonna die on."
"Don't worry, Jim. A journalist already died on that hill for you." Had he stayed, he probably would have landed in my genuinely tragic can't joke about this category, because Jim Jeffries is one of my favorite comedians and is a big influence on my own writing. He's one of the examples I always point to for offensive humor done right. He can get away with joking about anything, and it's the getting away with it part that makes a truly good comedian, in my opinion. But I guess he had a good run with that. So, as the president of comedy, I'd like to introduce our first fully realized sellout of the video, the one and only Dave Chappelle. Back when I wrote for comic book resources, I will never forget how I included the closer in a list article about the worst stand-up specials on Netflix, and the steady stream of death threats I received for days afterwards. Because nothing says the return of the comedy king like a story about your trans friend dying that you managed to make entirely about yourself. With the shield of a $7 million net worth, Chappelle reportedly said during his set, quote, "It's easier to talk here than it is in America." I'm so glad all the brutalization towards women and queer people was worth it so you could finally tell those trans jokes you've been sitting on for years. Almost as if it was never actually about freedom of speech and was actually about freedom from criticism. Did you drag Elon Musk on stage with you this time too? As far as I know, cheating at Diablo 4 isn't punishable by death yet. And with that, bro, how much money do you actually need? Next up, a man I am very, very unfortunately attracted to, Pete Davidson. Not thrilled about the tattoo removal, but hey, his body, the royal family's choice. I like Pete. I'm not really a big fan of his stand-up, but I do think he's a pretty funny guy. But his decision to accept this gig puzzled fans, to say the very least, considering the one thing that everyone knows about him is that his father was a casualty of 9/11, and a certain group of folks are believed to be responsible for funding another group of folks who might have had something to do with all of that.
I just, I get the routing and then I see the number and I go, I'll go. I've been getting a little bit of flack just because like my dad died 9/11, so they're like, how could you possibly go there?
Yeah, dude, and if a Ukrainian comic did a show for Vladimir Putin, we'd all have a lot of questions now, wouldn't we? But somehow, I'm still not that surprised by this. You all knew this one was coming. coming, it's none other than Blue Chewer ringleader Andrew Schultz, who is quite possibly the biggest grifter and poser in the comedy scene right now, and that's really saying something. Now, Andy is currently in full damage control, trying desperately to wash the stench of the Trump administration off of him, because nothing screams comedy podcast like interviewing politicians. This is how we save free speech, guys. This is how we preserve the last bastion of free expression here in this glorious country that's been plagued by the woke mind virus. And by voting for Lord God Emperor President Donald Trump, we can finally—
You see what your boy's doing? You voted for this. I'm like, I voted for none of this. He's doing the exact opposite of everything I voted for.
Oh, well, this is pretty awkward.
And for anyone under 40, late night TV is how the pharmaceutical industry gets your uncle hooked on opioids. And for anyone under 30, TV is like TikTok, but your phone is sideways and not controlled by Bamboo Babe Ruth.
What the f*** are you talking about?
There is always going to be someone offended by a joke. Half the population is female. And if you got offended by that, you're proving my point.
What point? That men aren't funny? You can't fail at jokes about girl cock as much as you do while simultaneously glazing Trumps. And now, Andrew, you know that the stripper, in fact, does not like you back, and you're now scared of your senpai coming after you for the lamest, tamest, most incoherent rambling I've ever seen passed off as comedy. So now, the only place that you feel safe is in the hands of other billionaires who will finally appreciate your rape jokes and $1,000 sneakers. I'd be way more surprised if you hadn't taken this gig. I'm looking at myself in the mirror across from me, and I'm just now realizing that I look like Jeffree Star. Please don't come after me, internet. I didn't mean for this to happen. I can't help that I'm pale and have a jeans creamingly sharp jawline and pink hair. Next, we have British comedian and escaped Christmas elf Jack Whitehall. I've seen his stand-up. He does that thing that a lot of British comics do where they're like, I have jokes and here's the proof. You know what I mean? Like Ricky Gervais does it, Jimmy Carr, you know, all the fish and chips crowd. Sorry, is that offensive? Sorry, UK viewers. I don't really have an opinion on him being here or in general. So he's gonna be our inaugural do no don't care of the video. This next one is the one we've all been waiting for because nobody on this platform has shut the hell up about it for 2 weeks now. It's the one and only Bill Burr. Listen guys, you need to relax. Why is Bill catching all the heat? When he said billionaires should be put down like rabid dogs, he was referring to the billionaires who aren't paying him millions of dollars. Bill said free Luigi Mangione, not freedom of speech. When he called out the people performing for Gaddafi's kids.
Beyonce and Mariah Carey actually did private New Year's gigs for $1 million for Gaddafi's kids. Can you fucking believe that? How much fucking money do you need to make? You know? You're gonna take a gig where you're gonna go dance like a goddamn fucking clown for a mass murderer's kids?
He was just jealous that he wasn't the clown. He's simply putting the bill in Saudi billionaires. Lighten up, divas. I'm sure Bill has a perfectly good explanation for all this.
I thought this place was going to be like really tense. And I'm thinking like, is that a Starbucks next to a Pete's Coffee, next to a Burger King, next to a McDonald's, next to a Pizza Hut, next to a Dunkin' Donuts, next to a Krispy Kreme, next to a Cheesecake Factory, next to a KFC, next to a Chili's? They got a fucking Chili's over here?
See guys, they're just like us. Our government pulled Jimmy Kimmel off the air for a week. Their government bonesawed a journalist and stuffed him in a suitcase. But the one thing that brings us together, Chili's.
You know, I don't know what's going to happen here. And like my whole fucking idea of Saudi Arabia is what I've seen like on the news. I literally think I'm going to fucking land and everybody's going to be screaming, death to America. And they're going to have like machetes and want to like chop my head off, right? Because this is what I've been fed about that part of the world.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack with that statement. I mean, aside from this being an absolutely brain-dead, how about those Dallas Cowboys ass take, I have just one question for you, buckaroo. Do you really think that you, William Frederick Burr, one of the biggest comedians in the entire world, a multi-millionaire, a straight white cisgender man, would be flown out on an all-expenses-paid luxurious trip to one of the richest countries in the world pay you $1.6 million for a night of stand-up comedy just for them to execute you, let alone behead you? You've come so full circle with your stupidity that I now have to defend Saudi Arabia because you're just being f***ing racist now. Bill's entire stage persona has been built around brutal honesty and calling out bullshit whenever he sees it. And that's why people love him. This decision contradicts everything he's said and done over the course of his career. If Bill had just come clean and said that he was in it for the money, sure, people might still be pissed off, but at least he'd still kind of be the honest guy we came to know and love. Hot take, I know, but this is genuinely tragic and I don't have any more jokes for this. Next up, it's Sebastian Maniscalco. Here's a perfect example of a comedian I casually enjoy, but I'm not really invested in his cult of personality or his place in the stand-up world. And I think part of that is how not associated he is with goon number 3, who always says, "It's the freaking best!" But Sebastian's been at this a long time. I remember watching him when I was like in middle school. I don't need him, but I like him, which is why I was somewhat disappointed to see him on this lineup, but ultimately not very surprised. We've got none other than Garth Brooks impersonator and basketball legend Tommy Buns, or Tom Segura if you're a normal person. Boy, what a roller coaster my parasocial relationship with Tom Segura has been over the past 7 or 8 years. Because Tom Segura was, and honestly still is, one of my favorite comedians of all time. I used to listen to Your Mom's House religiously until it became the same kind of freak show that a Victorian gentleman and his lady friend would throw like pennies at back in the day. Tom, Christina P., and even Bert Kreischer in the early days of Two Bears, One Cave all became a really big part of my and my partner's lives. And it's certainly not their fault that we developed this parasocial relationship with them. If I was going to get into the entire saga of how Tom got his entire fan base to turn on him, we'd be here all day. So I highly recommend you check out my stand-up video where I go more into detail about this. Long story short, Tom got rich. Tom began telling everyone he was rich and that they were poor. People told him it was annoying, and then he continued to double down on this rich asshole persona until his publicist took him aside and was like, dude, you need to stop. Who would have thought washcloths that say poor on them wouldn't sell well with the people who made you rich enough to be Ted Cruz's neighbor? So this is tragic, but it's also not surprising. And considering how much his public opinion has tanked, I'd be more surprised if he didn't accept this gig. But after broadcasting all your braggadocious adventures and insisting that being poor is simply a mindset issue, bro, how much money do you actually need? Next up, we have Aries Spears. He was on Mad TV way back in the day, and apparently he also co-hosted the AVN Awards in 2018 and 2025. I never really got into Mad TV. I was always more of a Kids in the Hall guy myself, but literally the only thing I've ever seen this guy do is bitch about his career not taking off on Bobby Lee's podcast. So do know, don't care, moving on. Here's another roller coaster of Francis's feelings packed inside one short king. It's none other than Mark Normand. When Marky Mark first blew up on the stand-up scene, I was a big fan. Out to Lunch is one of the funniest specials produced in the last decade, and it's up on YouTube for free. He packs so many jokes into every sentence, which is, and I can't believe I even have to say this, not something you see a whole lot of most of the time. Even his most offensive material was still funny because they were jokes, you know, setups, punchlines, not just saying something shocking for the sake of it, Andrew Schultz. Now, that said, Mark is also an alleged sex pest and joke thief. Both of those things take you down a couple of notches in my book.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring her.
Wow.
Oh yeah, just to show her how
Can I
good
kiss
she's
your
got
wife in
it.
public?
I want to be like, you see, you think I'm an asshole? Well, they'll cut your cut off, bitch.
Chill out, lib. The joke is that he hates his wife. Because at the very least, I used to like his comedy, I'm gonna say I'm disappointed, but definitely not surprised. Next up, what the hell is he doing here? It's Wayne Brady, and this was my way of finding out that he apparently does stand-up comedy. He's mostly known for his work on Whose Line Is It Anyway, but as far as the Riyadh Comedy Festival, do know, super don't care. So I am a big advocate for women in comedy. I've dedicated my life pushing back against the the absolutely ridiculous notion that women aren't funny, considering it's actually men who are, in fact, not funny. But progress always hits some bumps in the road, and Whitney Cummings is a fucking boulder. Whitney is one of the 3 women who agreed to partake in the Riyadh Comedy Festival just a short while after Smallface McGee got GTA wasted, and she tweeted, quote, "If you are happy someone was publicly executed because they don't share your beliefs, congrats, you're the Taliban." Let's not be too harsh on Whitney here. After practicing your routine exclusively in front of an Android clone that you commissioned because you have so much money for some reason that you don't know what to even do with it all, a week of laughs in Saudi Arabia sounds like a dream come true, and I'd be much more surprised if you hadn't taken this gig. Next up, a man who threatened to destroy a dollhouse because he was afraid of being locked inside one. It's superstar Kevin Hart. I don't really have very strong opinions on Kevin's comedy. I've always found him to be pretty mid, but clearly I'm in the minority because his net worth is 450 million fuckaroos. I repeat, a man who has, and I cannot possibly stress this to you enough, $450 million now has 450 $2 million, approximately. He is the epitome of David Cross's scathing takedown of this whole mess. I am disgusted and deeply disappointed in this whole gross thing. The people I admire with unarguable talent would condone this totalitarian fiefdom for what? A 4th house? A boat? More sneakers? But out of all the people on this lineup, aside from Andrew Schultz, I'm the least surprised to see Kevin Hart here. The man is the very definition of a sellout. Shamelessly so. Really, bro, how much money do you actually need? Next up, Cypher Sounds. Maybe I'm just super uncultured, but I have never heard of this man in my entire life. Nonetheless, I hope that paycheck was solid. Don't know, don't care. Honestly, I was even more heartbroken to learn that Jessica Curson was on this lineup than Bill Burr. And that's because Jessica Curson is one of the funniest, ballsiest queer comics out there. Apparently, she was just as surprised as we were that she was invited to this festival despite being a very openly Jewish lesbian. And that's probably why she's the only comic so far who's actually issued a formal apology for attending. I hope that this could help LGBTQ+ people in Saudi Arabia feel seen and valued. I'm grateful that I was able to do precisely that. To my knowledge, I'm the first openly gay comic to talk about it on stage in Saudi Arabia. I received messages from attendees sharing how much it meant to them to participate in a gay-affirming event. At the same time, I deeply regret participating under the auspices of the Saudi government. I have a special relationship with my fans because of the vulnerable nature of my comedy and the trust they place in me as part of the queer community. To my fans, I see you, I hear you, your voice matters to me. I love you all, and I'm genuinely sorry for making a poor decision that had repercussions I didn't fully consider. I will take full responsibility for my actions and dedicate myself to making amends so that my words and choices reflect the respect and care you deserve. Here's the thing though, she is right. There are queer people in Saudi Arabia, just as there are queer people everywhere. They need representation. I'm glad that there were people there who did appreciate that representation. And I think Jessica's heart was in the right place in that regard. That said, definitely not a well thought out decision, as she stated in her apology. Somewhere in the middle of Bill Burr's amazement at him being able to buy a pair of Timbs in Saudi Arabia, he included an anecdote about Jessica's set at the festival, and he didn't call her out by name, but like, which other Jewish lesbian comics could we possibly confuse her with at the Riyadh Comedy Festival?
Middle of the set, 2 of the diplomats got up to go to the bathroom, and this person said, "Hey, where are you going? Are you going to go on Grindr?"
I don't know if you guys realize just how ballsy it was for her to do that. That is some crazy work right there. Additionally, Jessica confirmed that she's donating the entirety of her salary to a human rights organization, which has not yet been named. That said, she did admit that she got buttered up like everyone else, and therefore she still sold out, and this is still genuinely tragic, and I don't have any more jokes about this. So technically, this lineup isn't the worst list that Chris Tucker's ever been on, but It ain't great. No, but really, Chris Tucker traveled on Epstein's airplane with Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey to help combat the HIV/AIDS epidemic in Africa. That's it. That's the show. Good night, everybody. Considering how extensive his film and TV career has been, I honestly completely forgot that he ever did stand-up. And also, considering all the pickles he's gotten into with the IRS over the years, I'm not that surprised he took this gig. Once you've been on Epstein's plane in any context, you've pretty much lost all your moral grandstanding privileges, and I think he knew that. It almost feels dismissive to put him in do know, don't care, but I do know him, but I don't care. Next up, professional door blocker and winner of the King Henry VIII lookalike competition, it's Louis C.K. Now there's a name I haven't heard for a long time. If you don't know what happened with Louis C.K. back in 2017, I regret to inform you that you have, in fact, been living under a rock, and Google is your friend here. So Louis' response to the backlash was also kind of dumb, but it also wasn't an apology, and it certainly didn't involve him crashing out on his fans, Bill. Basically, he said he understood why people were concerned, that he had mixed feelings as well, but he ultimately went through with it because he wanted to be part of a stand-up thing and spread the joy of stand-up comedy. More or less the most neutral possible response that has nothing to do with the money aspect. I don't know why I still allow myself to be disappointed by Louis C.K., but nonetheless, I can't say I'm that surprised. Didn't he lose like $35 million or something crazy like that? Next up is Zarna Garg, the third and final woman to perform at the Riyadh Comedy Festival. I had never heard of her before all this, but I'm sure she had her reasons for doing this, right? Whatever, don't know, don't care. Our next entry is none other than world-famous boy Aziz Ansari. I know boy is an outdated term and I don't care, it describes him perfectly. Anyway, the guy who we were all forced into supporting last month asked Aziz for his explanation on the matter.
I said, you know, I'm gonna do this and I hope it's positive. I share the concerns that people have brought up and it's all valid, and I said to myself and to my team, I said, hey, if we do this, part of the fee should go to support causes that support free press and human rights, and
Fun fact, when he tried to donate a part of the fee to Human Rights Watch, they turned it down. But why wouldn't they? They were the ones begging these comics not to go in the first place. He's like, I know I just played a big part in Trump getting elected, but don't worry, I'm gonna donate some of that money to the Zoran Mamdani campaign. The Bro, how much money do you actually need? Next up, man, I didn't know that Goosebumps dummy was such a whiner. It's Jimmy Carr. Jimmy is kind of fascinating to me because one time I saw him perform at a benefit show and he was doing that thing where he has like an actual list of jokes. Again, I have jokes and here's evidence. And he crosses them off as he goes along depending on the audience reactions to these painfully tame one-liners. And I actually used to do that too, but in like my first year of stand-up. So then I was like, huh, he turned that gimmick into a whole career. Unfortunately, that show wasn't uploaded to the internet, but all of his terrible trans jokes were.
There's now 10 pronouns. I'll quickly go through it so we're all on the same page. The 10 pronouns are he, she, they, them, it, gross, what is that? My pronouns are he.
What a hoot. We just can't handle edgy comedy like that here in the States. So he took one look at that contract, didn't see the word pronouns on it, and flew straight to Saudi Arabia on the back of Santa's sleigh. But hey, let's not be too harsh on Jimmy, guys. The last time he got in trouble for telling jokes, he was cursed to look like this. Next up, Ben Hart. The hell is Ben Hart? Oh, he's a magician? Pfft. Who cares, dude? Moving on. I know their podcast says they might be drunk, but that still isn't an excuse for both Mark Normand and Sam Morril to take blood money. But it looks like they've both been keeping pretty quiet on this matter, and I think they're just waiting for all of this to blow over eventually. As far as I know, Sam Morril isn't an alleged sex pest or joke thief, and I do actually find him funnier than Mark Normand, so I'm naturally extra disappointed that he's on this list. But I'm still still not surprised. Why shouldn't he look the other way when he's paid probably more than Tim Dillon? This next guy I had never heard of before, but he looks like a cross between Rodney Dangerfield and Norm Macdonald if they found both their names in the Epstein files. If you're a Jamoan fan and you're watching this, sorry. Don't know, don't care. I've never seen Sugar Sammy's comedy, but I've definitely heard the name before. His name is Sugar Sammy. How do you not hear about that? But I did hear his reason for attending the Riyadh Comedy Festival. Since freedom of expression is threatened in America, I guess I have to diversify my audience. Saudi Arabia and Dubai, here I come. Again, not familiar with the guy's stand-up, but he does have a face that says, yeah, this gig will cover the cost of a used BMW. What of it? Either way, don't care. Yeah, you might have resisted going to the Riyadh Comedy Festival so far, but what if they put this face on it? You're really gonna say no to Fluffy? Look at him! Look at that face! I'm pretty neutral on Gabriel Iglesias. I do like his range of voices, which I guess is his main appeal. Normally I'd put him in do know, don't care, but then I found out he is worth $50 million. It is almost 2 in the morning. Can you tell I'm losing my mind? Feels like just yesterday I was watching him on Comedy Central in the 8th grade and I was like, huh. Alright, that said, bro, was 50 million really not enough? Next up, Ali Sadiq, another name I've heard for years, but for some reason, never actually listened to his work. So, do know, don't care. We've got the Grand Wizard of Roast Battle and actual centaur from Fallout. It's none other than Jeff Ross. Now, I used to do Roast Battle a lot, and Jeff was always the one judge who would always provide constructive criticism after each battle, and not just throw their own shitty roast jokes at us, Tony Hinchcliffe, and I always appreciated it, which is why it was especially painful to learn about his allegations. Again, Google is your friend. This video is already very long, and I am a very tired drag queen, and it is very late at night. A lot of battlers are scared to bring up those allegations because they're worried they might not get a spot on Roast Battle, but I'm not. Here's the thing, Jeff, since there's a non-zero chance you're watching this. You were one of 2 judges during the best roasting set I had ever written in my entire life. You actually applauded 2 of my jokes. The 2 best ones, I might add. I've lost battles before, and I usually graciously accept defeat. But a tie, Jeff? Really? The one time I absolutely demolished my opponent, and you gave us a tie because it was the first battle back at the Comedy Store after the pandemic started and you were in a good mood. Yeah, I know you said we both did an amazing job and great work, both of you, but you gave us a f***ing tie, Jeff. Now I know how Monet and Trinity felt. I already knew you didn't want the Riyadh gig, but you needed it. Terminally ill, Dr. Seuss character looking ass. Call me Shane Gillis the way that was 5 years ago and I'm still mad as hell. Now that that's off my chest, Moa Mare. Never heard of her. Sorry. Next up is Chris DiStefano. Now, I'm not actually a fan of his, but I guess I expected a little better from him considering his Two Bears temping co-host turned down the gig. Chris claims his fiancée encouraged him to take the gig so that they could pay for their wedding. Nice, bro. Always let your wife take the fall. Unlike the chivalrous Mark Normand, Chris's biggest upside to the kingdom's repression of women was that his fiancée couldn't come with him. Again, chill out, snowflakes. The joke is that he hates his fiancée. I don't know, I'm not surprised at all, but I thought maybe, just maybe, Stavi could push him onto the right track. But I don't know why I, have hope. Next up, Omid Jalili. I also had never heard of this guy before this whole festival, but he did write a piece for The Guardian explaining his decision, and I wanted to hear his perspective considering Omid is a Middle Eastern comic. When artists perform in the Middle East, they don't just face the regime, they face real people, many of whom are reform-minded, quietly disillusioned youth who want to embrace new ideas without betraying their own culture and beliefs. As an international performer, I like to connect with local artists. As a Middle Eastern comedian, I am of the view that a blanket boycott tends to dismiss and patronize ordinary Saudis, often those eager for exposure to diverse culture. Going to Saudi Arabia is not about endorsing a regime. Performing is not selling out. Rather, it is about sharing laughter and a chance for cultural exchange as a force for social transformation. And we underestimate the transformative power of comedy at our peril. So I went. Again, he's correct about a lot of this. But also again, you're not just performing for the people. You are accepting money from the government and the royal family, specifically as a part of a years-long project designed to whitewash that very regime. The people of Saudi Arabia deserve representation. They deserve diversity in arts and humanities. And it's really, really sad that the only way they're currently able to get that is through a state-sanctioned event where the main goal is to make the rest of the world look the other way. I do appreciate his perspective, but also, don't know him, don't care. Clearly he had his reasons. Here's another name I was not surprised at all to hear on this lineup, Joe Coy. He's another comedian I remember seeing on Comedy Central back in the late 2000s and being like, yeah, alright. I'm fairly neutral on the dude, but considering the super chill history of how the Saudi government has treated its very large Filipino population, I'm sure his paycheck outweighed the fact that this is the equivalent of a Palestinian comic doing a show sponsored by the IDF. And, don't forget, his net worth is estimated at $30 million. Really, bro? How much money do you need? Next is Maz Jobrani. Heard this guy's name for years, still never seen his stand-up. So, sorry, do know, don't care. Is it reductive for me to group Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino together? I don't really dislike either of them. I actually loved Bobby Lee in Inside Job, but I'd also be more surprised if they didn't take this gig. As far as comedy podcasters go, they're far less repugnant than, say, the Rogan Simulacrum, but neither of them have taken a moral stand on anything in the comedy scene, and their stand-up is fine. So why wouldn't they accept a fat paycheck from the Saudi government? Coming up on our last couple here, we've got Russell Peters, a name that I've heard a lot, but not recently, and I actually have seen his stand-up, and yet I do not care. And last but certainly not least, our final sellout at the 2025 Riyadh Comedy Festival. It's none other than Hannibal Buress? Dude. Really? You? The reason Bill Cosby's crimes ever came to light? The Andy Richter of the Eric Andre Show, one of my favorite shows of all time? Really? You? How could you... Oh, wait. That's right. You're a landlord now. You evicted people from a building you own in Chicago to open it up for Airbnb rentals. And you opposed Bernie Sanders' calls for rent control. Okay. You also joined the Won't Someone Please Thank the Landlords Association. And then when people came after you, you used the Schrodinger's douchebag defense of it's just a joke. Cool. Very cool. What's that? You tried donating $4,000 to a housing charity and they refused your donation? Hannibal, have you met your fellow sellout Aziz Ansari? We're on page 12 of this script and I am fresh out of jokes. This is genuinely tragic. I've said everything that I already needed to, so I'll leave you with what Jay Jordan said about all of this. And after that, we'll look at the winning comments from the last video. I was never very good at transitions back when I did stand-up.
My take on the Riyadh Comedy Festival in Saudi Arabia, if you do it and you come back, all praises be to Allah. If you come back, I'm gonna say good. I'm glad you're back, but guess what? We gonna make fun of you for a little bit. And that's the rule. No one's being excommunicated from the comedy society. Everyone is welcome back. Everyone can come back to wherever they told jokes before, but just know people are gonna make fun of you a little bit. The same way we're gonna make fun of you if we saw you at the inauguration. That's how it should be, and that's how it's been for so long. But this one thing is supposed to make us go, no. Because if you do that festival, you're performing for their Don Jr. if Don Jr. could kill people. If Don Jr. had his own wing at Rikers, that's who you're performing for.
Axel the Aussie says, to paraphrase Mr. Krabs, we used to beat people up for doing things like this. Gen XSJ 3902 says, the baby on the birthday cake looks more like Lady Bunny than Donald Trump. I'm telling her you said that. Anomalous Humanoid says, I'm surprised the most popular cake for a Trump-themed party isn't a white sheet. You too could be featured in the next video. Leave a comment below and I will pick my favorite ones and give you a shout out next time. But if you would like to guarantee your name be featured at the end of every video, please consider joining my Patreon. If you join any of the membership tiers that are conveniently named after Fallout protagonists, your name will be mentioned at the end of every video. You might also get other cool stuff like access to my Discord, behind the scenes content on how I make my wigs, ad-free and uncensored versions of my videos. So if you love my content and my drag, you can support this channel directly by clicking the link to my Patreon in the description box. box. If you would like to see me simp for my favorite game characters and get visibly frustrated in real time, please follow me on Twitch. This is like some sperm killing leather. And if you'd like to see even more of my clown mug elsewhere, consider following me on Instagram or Blue Sky. My handle for all of the above is @QueenCokeFrancis. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't done so already, please accept a comedy gig where the only thing bigger than your paycheck is the list of topics you can't joke about. Once you realize that means your whole act is pretty much thrown out the window, do the old Louis C.K. shuffle by going ahead and unzipping your pants and dick slapping those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. Thank you again to Aura for sponsoring this video, and thank you to all my patrons and subscribers who have helped my channel grow and thrive the way that it has been. And, of course, as always, until next time, it is 2 in the morning.